And that's the link to this second session, because in terms of human achievement, then also we could talk about sport being something that's been very, very important in terms of some of the things that we've achieved as a human civilization. Citius, Altius, Fortius was the phrase that was coined in, I think it was 1896, before the Athens Olympic Games. In English it means swifter, higher, stronger, and it probably encapsulates what many of us think about the kind of very best aspects of sport, that physical attempt to prevail in a competition against other people. I think it's probably been the situation over the past 20, 30, 40, however many years, where other things have started to become part of the conversation about sport. We've seen a great amount of commercialisation and money going into sport, which perhaps is a distorting effect. We've seen controversies around cheating and doping. We've seen the politicisation quite often of sport, which you could say has always been there in sport, but seems to have become particularly pronounced in sport. So one of the things that we want to do in this conversation is to try and look at sport as a human achievement and ask, do we really need to be fair in order to admire sport? Does politicisation of sport ruin it? Are we, when a sportsman breaks a record, are we witnessing something deeper about the human condition and the human potential for progress? What can sporting achievement tell us about humanity and progress? Is the kind of broad terms, very broad terms really, that I've collected my panel together tonight to speak about. So let me introduce them very quickly in the order that they're going to speak. First, on my far right, we've got Dr. Stefan Chatrath. He's Professor of Sports Marketing and the Vice Dean of the University of Applied Sciences Europe degree programme, which is Sport and Event Management. And his main teaching and research areas are sports marketing, sports sponsorship and management. He's also worked as a consultant actually in sport, which maybe is the business enemy of sport. I don't know. We'll no doubt find out. Next to me is Sascha Tamm, who studied philosophy and political science and physics. He's currently based at the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. He's published several books on liberal political philosophy, and he's a commentator, including on Russia, actually, which is a country that tends to come into the sports discussion quite a lot. So welcome to you, Sascha. On my far left, we've got Robert Jablukov. He's the CEO of UFC Gym, Germany. He's been instrumental in the establishing and then expanding of the brand, I think. His background's also in sports management, and he's one of the things that he does with UFC is revolutionise fitness by integrating martial arts with traditional fitness programs. So that's Robert. And then last up, we'll have on my immediate left, Stephanie Adam, who's a physiotherapist and a former athlete in track and field and cross-country skiing. She's a campaigner for women's rights in sport and speaks regularly on Germany's new self-ID law or self-determination law, however you want to term it, and the likely effects of that on women and girls, clubs and organisations, and society more broadly. So, can we welcome them all? I've given them 5 minutes each to make a few comments to start with, and then you know the score now. It's kind of out to you for your comments and questions. So, Stefan.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. Good evening also from my side. In my speech, I want to take a closer look on the question, what sporting achievement tell us about humanity and progress. So my hypothesis is as follows. Athletes breaking records mean more than just a public demonstration of their extraordinary physical skills. Sporting achievement also shows, firstly, the power of human determination. It reflects, secondly, society's values, highlights, thirdly, the progress through innovation and science, and last but not least, relates to ethical debates. I will now address these four aspects in more detail. Firstly, let us focus on what I call, or what we would call, the power of human determination. Sporting achievements show us the human drive to overcome limits, physically and mentally. Athletes push and redefine boundaries. Let us take the example of the Olympic champion Eliud Kipchoge. This is the first person who ran a marathon in under 2 hours in 2019. He is one of the best long-distance runners of his time, and for me, his performance is, of course, admirable because of his incredible speed over a long distance, 21 kilometers per hour on average. But his performance also exemplifies, I would say, the human drive to achieve something seemingly impossible. Kipchoge's success is the result of his long-standing pursuit of excellence, his hard training, including the development of intelligent racing tactics to optimize the performance. And such excellence has been also an inspiration for his competitors to do the same, to push the boundaries even further. So Kipchoge's example shows how an outstanding performance can help initiate further progress in sports, because actually it spurs others on to work on even harder, so such as Calvin Kiptum, who took the world record from Kipchoge in 2023. Secondly, sporting achievement reflect the value system of a society. Strength, stamina, discipline, we admire all of this in top athletes. But here, too, a change has occurred. Take the example of Simone Biles, a gymnast and also an Olympic champion. She was also admired for having the courage to publicly admit her weakness. At the 2020 Olympic Games, she withdrew from the competition and later explained that that was due to psychological problems and out of a consideration for her mental health. So this shows the change in society with regard to well-being and high performance. We live in a time in which mental health has become increasingly important, and this is also reflected in elite sport. Thirdly, progress in sports also is an example for scientific and technological advancements. Athletes benefit from advances in training science, nutrition, and sports equipment that have enabled them to significantly improve their performance. Take swimming, for example. Innovations with regard to swimming technique and swimming suits have led to many world records being broken in recent decades. So in 2008 alone, 55 new world records actually were broken or were set when Speedway launched the LZR Racer swimming suit. Therefore, we could say that progress in sport is also a showcase for how technological progress can advance specific areas of a society. It shows us how human beings can use knowledge and technology to improve their situation significantly. Fourthly, sporting achievements also make us think about the moral limits of progress. Those of us who are older will certainly remember Ben Johnson's brilliant 100-meter run at the 1988 Olympic Games in Seoul. 9.79 seconds, what an incredible time back then, and I have to say I was amazed in front of the television. And Ben Johnson would have been even faster if he hadn't started shooting 5 meters before the finish. Yeah, and then afterwards, the great disappointment that he took performance-enhancing drugs. I have to say that this still has an effect today. With every world record in athletics, I'm skeptical at first whether it was done correctly. So the use of doping is unfair and unacceptable. That's how many people would see it. We want the world records to be broken, but everyone should play by the same rules. Otherwise, it's not worth anything. It's unethical. Let me summarize. What can sporting achievement tell us about humanity and progress? I would say it raises questions beyond the impressive physical performance of athletes. Sporting achievement gives us an idea of what human potential and social progress can mean in a concrete field of application. It is a symbol of the power of human determination, reflects the values that are important to us, and exemplifies the human quest for innovation in connection with ethical issues. Every record broken is, of course, a triumph for the individual athlete, but also a mirror image of the progress and struggle that define humanity itself. Yeah, and now I look forward to the other contributions and to the discussion with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Stefan. That was a really useful, I think, setting out of some of the territory that we need to be looking at. So, Sascha, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I can agree with Stefan on a philosophical, cultural philosophical level. But as a political philosopher, somehow, I like to talk about politics on this panel a little bit. And the first question, if political philosophers hear the word, why should we care about, is who is we? And we have, particularly in top professional sports, in Olympic sports, we have a tendency of complete or at least partial government support and government control of everything. Everyone might remember the discussion after the Paris Olympics. Germany was bad, took only, I think, the 10th place in the medal ranking. It was worse than ever, and so on. And this was, for some people, somehow a national catastrophe, to some extent. And there are a lot of arguments for those top athletes to be supported. But I think no valid arguments to be supported on a professional level. From my perspective, if sport shall be real human achievement, real free human achievement, it should be organized on a professional and on an amateur level in free associations. Probably on a school level, there might be government support. All the other things should not be nationalized. They are not only governmentalized, they are also nationalized. You know, if you bring together our national team or something else in every sport we can imagine, from canoeing to fencing, horse riding, whatever, to soccer, then it becomes a national thing, particularly at your country, by the way. UK, you invest much more now. And
I'm Scotland.
Okay. Okay.
But it's a better part of the UK.
But it's UK, yeah? And in Germany, there was a discussion that UK and France, they did better because they put more public money into the system. And I get always my serious doubts if that is real human achievement if you organize it by government, by states. And then there's another discussion, you mentioned it in your remarks, introducing remarks, commercialization. That's all commerce, and sports is something else, something pure or something like that. You know, the Berlin Marathon, where some world records have been broken, other marathons, those are commercial events. And commercial events are, from my perspective, good events, because people make their living for it, other people pay for it, and that's a good thing. It's better than people pay for it who are not interested in marathon, in canoeing, in whatever. I don't know, 10 years ago, I wrote an article, is there a human right to canoe? And because there was a discussion, our Olympic sports people, our athletes, our German athletes, get less money than people, for example, from Azerbaijan. That was probably the example. Azerbaijan gets most, the Olympic champions from Azerbaijan gets more money than anyone else. So, and they suffer so much, and so on. Actually, I don't buy this argument. Nobody forces them to suffer for being Olympic champion. That's a bad argument from my perspective. And if you nationalize, politicize, and sports, all the positive things on a professional achievement level, but also on an amateur level, meaning people like doing sports, it's good for their health, it creates fun and so on, it's good for the children, they learn social competencies, everything else in sports, will be devalued. And in the long run, there is a wrong incentives are set, and that's already the end.
Okay, thank you. Right, I might come back to you later on the sort of professional, national, commercial thing, or someone in the audience might. Robert, your thoughts?
Well, actually, I have to change on my first sentence. Thank you, Sascha, first. So, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about a subject that's actually my daily business, whether it's in the UFC or in the sport industry or in the fitness world. Like, the sentence was, why should we care about sporting achievements? I'm going to paraphrase it to, why should I care about it? Very simple answer, because I love winning. Like, for me, that's why people actually love sporting achievements, because they love to win. But actually, when you look at it, it goes much deeper. For example, UFC athletes, for those of you who don't know what UFC is, Ultimate Fighting Championship, in simple words, cage fighting. Look it up. You can look it up. So for UFC athletes, they push themselves daily. And at the same time, every one of us, we push ourselves daily, whether it's at the job, at the gym, no matter where. And sporting achievements at the end of the day represent something far more profound. So for me, it's like the combination of sacrifice, it's discipline, and especially resilience. And if you think about mixed martial arts fighters, what they have to go through, relentless training, endless hours of perfecting techniques, mental battle every single day. You have a lot of adversity to overcome. And there's always a story behind every single win. And the story behind the win is probably as valuable as the win itself. So every achievement stands as the proof of journey through pain, doubt, and then eventually growth. In a way, it becomes a testament to us, like I heard the word human spirit today, to what we're capable of when we actually refuse to quit, when we stand up one more time, or in our case, when we actually fight one more round. And this journey is not exclusive to professional athletes. I mean, probably every one of you went to work today, or to the uni. So we had hard days as well. So, and what's really important is, in my understanding, everyone has something worth fighting for. There's a reason why everyone gets up in the morning, whether it's for the family, whether it's your job, whether it's for your kids. And you do it without having a spotlight. Like in the UFC, they have the octagon, they have the spotlights, and millions watching around the world. We do it quietly, no one sees us. But the drive behind athletes and us as private people is the same. It's exactly the same. And it's not about lifting heavier, it's not about running fast, it's not about getting stronger. It's just proving to yourself that you can be better today than you were yesterday, and that you can be better tomorrow than you were today. So every time you beat a personal best, whether it's a set of push-ups, for example, or a faster run, or you got better at work, you're embracing the same spirit of achievement that professional athletes do. You're setting your own stage every single day, you're fighting your own battles every single day, and you're pushing through your own challenges every single day. So why should other people care about our achievements? And again, for me it's very easy, because it inspires everyone. If someone breaks a record, it inspires someone. If I'm getting better at work, it might inspire my co-workers to become even better, or try to overachieve me. So it says, like, if someone breaks a record, Stefan, back to your argument, there's probably an athlete who's going to say, if he can do it or she can do it, maybe I can do it too, or even better. Hashtag world records. So, whether we realize it or not, like every achievement is like a silent motivator to everyone around us. And we don't do it ourselves. I mean, there's personal motivation, but sporting achievements usually create a sense of community. Like, I'm a huge football fan, I'm a huge American football fan, I usually travel to stadiums every single weekend, and I'm not the only one. It's like 70,000 maniacs with me usually. And when we do this, there's always someone with us. Some people that we cheer on together, that just part of the progress. And just to finish quickly, usually sporting achievements keep us grounded. Because we understand, okay, sporting achievement doesn't come easy. We always have struggles, and there's no victory without an effort. So achievements, they teach us humility, resilience, valuable lessons in a world where people often want instant results. Like, you don't get quick results in sport. And every hard-earned success, again, it's a story of grit and discipline. And so whether you're in an octagon or you're hitting the gym after a long day at work, like every single achievement matters. And they're not just milestones, they're like reminders to you and your like surrounding of what we can accomplish when we are willing to put in the work, embrace the struggle, and believe in our potential. So sporting achievements remind us of who we are, who we want to become, and that the journey with all its highs and lows is worth every bit of blood, sweat, and tears at the end of the day.
Thank you. Okay, lots of useful stuff in there actually that I might get you to reflect on with some of the things that Stefan and Sascha said. But first, Stephanie, you give us your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yes, it's true. Sport events like the Olympic Games capture the world's attention. Although through history, sports has been marred by doping scandals and overshadowed by political tensions, these gigantic sport events still bring together people from all over the world, highlighting and celebrating outstanding achievements of human performances. These sporting achievements do tell us about humanity and progress, and they do tell us about the merit of hard work, about persistence, about suppressing obstacles, about building yourself up after you failed. They tell us about what the human body is capable of. Although it was certainly never true that anyone who works hard can make it to the top, since you surely do rely on certain physical abilities and the right support system. But besides humanity, there has always been one goal everyone agreed on: fairness. This is why there is an extensive anti-doping program in place. This is why we have categories in boxing or weightlifting. This is why we have separate categories for women and men. Or let's say we had them. At the 2024 Olympics and Paralympics, we witnessed some of the most outrageous scandals of our times. It was nothing less than a display and celebration of violence against women at the world's most prominent sports stage. Since the IOC abandoned sex testing in 1999, women had to deal with even more levels of deceit and discrimination. This was highlighted in an all-male podium in the 800 meters women's final in Rio in 2016. In error, many thought it couldn't possibly get any worse. But 8 years later, we still do not grant women the same rights as the men, a category exclusively for them. Pretending not to be able to find out how to exclude male advantage, we now not only expose women to ridicule, we also put them at risk to serious physical harm. Last week, German self-ID law called Selbstbestimmungsgesetz came into effect, and this was met with protests mostly by women all around the world. German organization Lasst Frauen sprechen, which means Let Women Speak, and Elspot Berlin initiated and organized this global protest. Many groups like the 2023 founded organization Frauenheldinnen and German-based initiative Just Gay joined them. People around the world joined in to protest this law that has nothing to do with self-identification, but has everything to do with coercing others into validating your delusions. From now on, we will see more and more boys and men identifying as girls and women, infiltrating women's sports and women's locker rooms. No checks and balances in place. The German Football Association DFB is already happy to provide special rights to men who want to play with and against women, fully aware of the increased risk of injury. In Germany, the case of Laura made the headlines, a balding man who whined his way into a female soccer team and who is now suing his way into a female-only gym founded 35 years ago. Boxers Khalif and Lin, as well as sprinter Petrillo, at the 2024 Olympics are just the tip of the iceberg. Reem Al-Salem, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, recently released her report about violence against women and girls in sports. The findings were shocking but not surprising, since many experts relentlessly warned about what was going to happen if sports governing bodies did not get a handle on this and solve the unsolvable issue, balancing fairness and safety on one side and inclusion on the other side. This is not some remote issue. It affects us all. One single man entering the female category in a single or team sports affects every other person involved one way or the other. In sports as in society, women are defrauded not only of medals, podiums, scholarships, ranking points, prize money and sponsors. They are robbed of their female-only spaces and this unique experience, competing among their peers and achieving their goals. More and more people realize that this perverted concept of inclusion only works at the expense of one group, women and girls. You cannot build a healthy society on deception, lies and injustice. People will not only turn away from these sports events and probably from sports in general, they will also turn away from political parties who totally abandon reality. If we as a society cannot fix this absolute no-brainer to grant women and girls the same rights as men, we cannot fix anything. Let's stop pretending this is about participation and the inclusion of the marginalized. Let's stop labeling women as sore losers or right-wing for standing up for their hard-earned rights and for their protest against being punched in the face by a man. Let's make science and facts great again. And let's stop catering to the feelings of delusional and abusive people and their perverted concept of inclusion. 2024 showed us this issue is that serious. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So, 4 quite different speeches and all very interesting in their ways, I think. I've got lots of questions, I know, for all of you, but it's not really my job to ask the questions. So I'm going to come out to you. Pick up on anything that you want that anybody said, or even things that they haven't said if you feel cheated out of some opinions. So who would like to start? Yes.
So we talked about the noble, elevated elements of sport here, but especially about fighting, and also when we watch males in women's sports like punching women until the podium. I want to ask if there is not also, okay, there is this element of awe and admiration for our brother human beings, but isn't there also a bit of gladiator feeling to it? Because, you know, they injure themselves, we see they bleeding, there is a bit of humiliation, they get hurt, and we are there also for this, for the blood. So isn't there a bit of also display of our lower, not so noble feelings and thoughts?
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Any thoughts at all? Yes.
It's a question for Stefan Chatrath. So he was talking about the importance of performance and of sport and for our society. I thought the points were quite well made. Why is it then that our society is looking at performance in such a, looking at it as something rather negative? So we've got, for example, there was a discussion to abolish school sports, not school sports as PE lessons, but Bundesjugendspiele, for example, like competition, saying we don't want a competitive society. How does he explain that?
Okay. One more. Yes.
Yeah, I would ask a question about the records. So it was also like highlighted that it's important for a human being to always break the records and stuff. And I mean, there's also the question that you could ask yourself, like, is there a limit to the records? Like, is there a point in time when we are not able to break records anymore? And I mean, what is the goal then? So, like, is it really the goal to break the records, or I mean, yeah, what's the real aim behind it?
Behind sport in general.
I mean, behind breaking records, is it really necessary that we always break the old records, or is there a limit somehow? And
Do you think
what do we do then? Yeah.
Improve. Or, yes, at the back.
My first one is first speaker, Stefan. Yeah, so she made mention of like granting the same right to women in sport as men. So my question is, so on what basis do you mean like granting the women the same right as men in sport? Is it based on the same, they perform the same thing and then the women are getting less attention, or they're being shown injustice just because they perform the same thing as men, or like on what basis do you mean granting the same rights as men?
Okay, and one final one for now, then I'll come back and get some responses and then out again. Yes?
To all of you, I think we have a kind of ridiculous situation at the moment when it comes to competition. On the one side, we are forced more or less to applause completely unfair competition. Let's see boxing, for example. On the other hand, as Sabine recognized, competition is not allowed anymore. It's evil, it's capitalistic, whatever. You know, this kind of really ridiculous situation we work in. You're both at the same time. You're forced to applause to completely unfair competition, and more or less you're forced to deny that competition is good. And would like to have statements from all of you.
All right.
If it is possible.
Yeah, maybe. Stefan, given a couple of those were directed towards your thoughts, do you want to just come back on those?
Yes, of course. So I think one of the questions from the audience was about what are actually the motives. Okay, why are actually watching sports? Is that only it cannot be only let's say the interest for seeing world records broken. I think that's among others. I mean, and probably the answer is.
Stefan, can you speak up a little bit because it's very hard to hear you?
Yeah. So I would say there are, of course, other motives. As far as we know from sociology, there are around 12 motives that we know. I mean, although obviously I won't now tell you all of them, but one of them would be drama. So people go there because it's exciting. We want to see a close competition there. Robert also said inspiration is something, acquisition of knowledge. When you play football yourself, you want to see how it is played and understand that. You derive, let's say, your pleasure from that. Social interaction, you go there with other people, you want to be there with your family. But also things like, that maybe relates a little bit to what you meant, is also what we know, violence and aggression. So there is one motive that we know is existing for specific sports. There is a context, obviously, there, where people are actually interested in seeing some, let us call it aggressive behavior, although it's, let's say, in a rule-based way. Yeah? So yes, so the answer probably would that is existing. It's a wide range of motives why actually people go there.
But can I just ask you on the competition question? Because in your introduction you talked about Simone Biles and Simone Biles,
yes.
the gymnast, the American gymnast, who ended up retiring basically, or you know, she had her personal problems for whatever reason. I'm not actually intending to cast any judgment on her own particular motives, but the reaction to that was very interesting because it was a very positive reaction to her pulling out of those particular events in the Tokyo Olympics, it was in a way that suggests that competition is something a little bit sort of dodgy or to be frowned upon. And is that something that's sort of crept into sport?
Yes, I mean,
it was like admit your frailty was seen to be a good thing rather than striving to be the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the case that sport is part of the society, so it would be strange if we cannot see developments that we see in other areas, or general developments, not all, but if we wouldn't see it also in these, in sports. I mean, sometimes it's obviously a serious problem that she had. I mean, she was there, I think, 20 Olympic Games and had to stop partially from her competitions because she had something that is a problem that I have to look at, like twisties. So if you lose your sense of orientation mid-air, and it's a psychological problem, as it seems.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I'm not commenting on her herself. It's the response to her.
Yes. So that's the one thing, and the other thing that I wanted to mention is that a couple of years ago we had Boris Becker, the famous German tennis player, who published his biography, and then he was in all of these discussions, and TV. And the main thing that he tried to push is not his sporting excellence, but his main focus was on he had problems to sleep before the important matches, and therefore he took some pills. And this is because he always was a little bit kind of sleeping while he was playing the first set. And when we saw him in the past, I always thought, is he still sleeping in the first? What's that? So, but my main point is here that it's interesting to see that it seems as if some of these famous people like Boris Becker want to make also some points to, or want to, let's say, to get some sympathy on showing their weaknesses. It seems as if they know that they can, or I mean, when they show, let's say, the other side of them, they can also make a point. We all know that they are sporting stars, and Simone Biles is a perfect example. Probably the best. One of definitely the best athletes ever, and she has also the other side shown in the public. And
Okay. Let me come to Robert then, and again on this sort of competition point, Robert, because the idea of faster, higher, stronger in its Olympic context has a sense of a real kind of social ideal to it. It's kind of societal striving. Even although it's an individual, it's kind of a societal aspiration. And yet a lot of what you were talking about in your introduction was very sort of personal. It was very centred on the person and what they could achieve. So has something changed here? Has sport lost that sort of more romantic, almost societal ideal, and it's become something just much more individualised?
Yes and no. I mean, now in my daily business, it's purely like, it's not a team sport. It's an individual sport. So like, what I mainly focuses on like on one person. But
even in team sports, individuals get so much.
I'm gonna tell you, like, on a personal note, like, I played team sports for 15 years. I played ice hockey and football, but I was a goalkeeper, so I have the biggest ego on the team. So I was always self-centered because, like, it's either me or someone else. It's not like you have 10 other field players. I think, like, things changed. For example, this year's Olympics, I thought, like, I talked to Stefan a couple times, like, if I'm going to go to Paris as well, because I was really interested, but I'm like, it's the one event that's still missing on my bucket list, to go to the Olympics, and I was kind of boycotting it this year, because, like, it's not what it's supposed to be in my mind, and not what it was in the past. It's, even though I love commercialization, I love the NFL, it's like the biggest commercial sport brand in the world. For me, it's authentic there, and the Olympics becoming more and more fake in my mind. And that's what hurts me. It's like when you watch like the opening ceremony, for example, of the Olympics. Like in the past, like you watch it and you love it. It's my personal opinion. like I watched the 4 hours and thought, okay, that's not Olympic. That's something.
Showbiz.
It's like I don't know.
Cultural lecture.
Cirque du Soleil went wrong. I don't know. And sometimes, like when you watch the events, like they're trying too hard. Like, what's the expectation? Like usually for me, Olympics is pretty easy. You got 205 or 6 countries walking out. You got 1 or 2 people, usually now male, female, having the flag. You got a big torch. You got a flame. Whoosh, it's going on. Someone singing the Olympic anthem. You got 16 days of competition. You got a big show. Spice goes to London and so on. Show is over, and let's move on to the next games. It was not the same this time. Like something was a bit off.
Well, let me come to Stephanie on that thing, and because you mentioned the boxers at the Olympics, obviously, and obviously the opening ceremony in Paris was interesting, if we can put it that way. So, to your mind, kind of what has the Olympics changed in the sort of way that Robert's saying, and if so, why? And also, there's a question at the back to you as well.
Yes, I would also agree that the opening ceremony already did reflect on how things, first of all, got commercialized more and more. I think this is also why a lot of people kind of turn away from these events, because people who saw the old Olympics, which was more focused on sports, not so much on theater and the scenery. We already saw that the organizers put a lot of focus on the political agenda, and that was globally criticized because it did focus on the queer community. We already saw these where they imitated a religious scene, and men dressed up as women. With it was people already criticized because it was not about sports, but highlighting some political agenda, which then also took part in the sports events, where a trans-identified male in the Paralympics competed against women in the 200 and 400 meters. Yeah. And this is the question the gentleman in the back raised, what I meant with granting the same rights. The men's category at the Olympics or in the other sports you can watch wherever are not affected by transgender issues, because they the only category that is affected is the women's category. Today there was a research published that trans men, so that women living as men, they usually, when they do sports, they stay in the female category because it absolutely makes sense. But transgender women or men identifying as women usually move on to the female category for validation. And of course, this is the issue. We don't have the discussion in the men's category, we only have it in the women's category. And this was in these Olympic Games globally displayed. That this is a massive setback for women's rights, because they can't do anything about it since the IOC abandoned these sex tests. Although so many women voted to continue having these sex tests for their own protection.
I guess the question I kind of struggle to get to grips with myself is why the Olympics has gone down this road. Because it seems because if you look at any surveys that are taken, then most people surveyed think it's the wrong way to go. Amongst the public, this is. And it seems to be only the media or the Olympic organisation or itself, or actually quite a lot of the corporations that support the Olympics, that wants it to go down that road. So is it just because they've got the power? Is that the way to understand it, or?
I think there are several motives for this. You have this global self-ID movement, started already in other countries all around the world. Now Germany has one of the worst self-ID laws with no checks and balances whatsoever. I think there is this, what I called perverted concept of inclusion, because a lot of people, they are compassionate and they want to include all kinds of peoples with into sports. They want to be welcoming. I think it's a very core human value to be inclusive, but it doesn't work in sports because we have these two categories for a very good reason. Also, you see that people like Casta Semenya, they actually profit from this development now, having been integrated in the female category. Though it is proven that he has internal testes, he's now running for, or he wants to run for president for the athletic.
Yeah.
I don't know the word
I
right
get
now.
that. I suppose the question I'm always struggling with is, and maybe this is one for Sascha actually to move on, because you were arguing against the politicization of sport, and in some ways I suppose you could say it's not even a new thing. I mean, you go back to Jesse Owens or Tommy Smith and the kind of Black Power movement or whatever. So, kind of why has it become such a thing now, an even bigger thing now? Is there anything different about the politicization of it now than in the past?
I don't know. Probably, its threshold was, and the turning point was the 36 Olympics in Berlin, 1936 Olympics. It was the first completely politicized Olympics with a political agenda and so on. However, why does politics influence sports so much today on the Olympic level? I think because our societies get more and more politicized. Because more and more topics are politicized in the sense that we need rules, laws for solving them. That's it. That we ask the government to solve the problem of sex, by the way, as well. My argument always when we talk about this self-determination laws, why does government has to have any saying in the sex of people? Why in official documents should be that written? The other question is that in sports, for example, the associations can decide themselves what they are doing, from my perspective. But politics, government should not influence them. That's my perspective on this one. But the general trend is, and we can also see this trend in sports, in culture, in arts, everywhere, that every part of our living, of our self-creation, and of our living together is politicized more and more. And politicized means not ruled by free agreements, by free contracts, by free association, but by government, to some extent by democratic processes. And people trust more political decisions than their own decisions. And that's a problem, I think.
Okay, I want to come back out again, but I did just want to ask out of curiosity about one of the things you said in your opening remarks, which was the point on nation. Were you saying that there shouldn't be nations represented at the Olympics? Would you just have a complete kind of non-representative system?
That's a good question, I think. It would be worth a try, I think. From my perspective. But that's an illusion, On one hand, because...
Okay, so that's good. Then, but if you have the Olympics organised on a nation basis, then surely the nation is going to support...
but nation and nation-state are two different things.
Okay.
All right. We're going to come deep into politics.
Is there someone else? Yes.
Okay. So one thing just occurred to me from the discussion about the Paris Olympics and sort of the nation. I guess, to me, watching the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics, I kept thinking to myself, I missed some of it, I guess, but I kept thinking to myself, what does this have to do with France? I don't know if anybody else had this thought, but in a way, I think it almost seemed like it was trying to be a post-national Olympics because, Lady Gaga sang, and I kept thinking, yeah, she's American. Well, what's going on? Anybody can sort of take that question if it's of interest. I also had the question, I guess specifically for Stephanie, but anybody can take it as well. On the subway the other day, I saw sort of a news flash, and usually there's quite a bit of sports coverage, but for the first time I saw something about, this female soccer player is still playing, or I forget exactly what it was, and I couldn't help thinking, I'm sure there was somebody who organizes these news briefs saying, hey, we have way too much about, male soccer players doing this, doing that. We need something about a woman soccer player. And in this way, I guess, it's a little bit, and there are also lots of complaints about, women's basketball not being profitable. Why don't enough people who like basketball watch women's basketball? Why don't enough people who like soccer or football watch women's soccer? It's a common complaint, I guess. And I would say, to me, this is sort of, on the one hand, inclusion working for women's sports. On the other hand, it's an example of anti-commercialization, or maybe inclusion overweighing commercialization. And I'd like to hear the varied opinions on that matter.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I have one question. For Robert mostly. A week or so ago, J.D. Vance was in the Joe Rogan podcast, and during the 3-hour conversation, as it always happens, they spoke about mixed martial arts as well. And Joe Rogan had the idea that everybody who is into mixed martial arts or competitive sports, referring to Mark Zuckerberg in this case, will sooner or later go to the Trump camp and become a conservative. Because if you exercise very hard and are serious in sports, you have to be a conservative. What do you think about this idea?
Yes.
Yes. What did you say to this guy, the second one from the right? He thought he said some things from the libertarian ideology of a political sect. I wanted to say two things. The first one, you said a nation can compete, but not nation states, because in your eyes is the state absolute evil. But there are two definitions of nation. One is nation defined by a passport that one has. That is all right, and that is necessary. The other one is nation defined as ethnical, and this definition of nation is very, very dangerous. And what you say is you are pleading for a nation that defines about ethnicity and not about state. If you say state is evil, state has nothing to do in sports, state destructs competition, then you but if there people should people should run for ethnical nations, not for state nations, then this is much more dangerous. And the second, if you say state has to keep his hands strictly out, if there is no state, there are only free individuals who are all equal and who can compete. This is exactly the problem for the women who have concurrence from men in women's sports. Yes, that is the problem. Men are stronger than women. At least most men are stronger than most women. And it is not so that equal without state, equal individuals compete one with one another. But it is if there is no state, then the strong dumps down to the weak.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, you said that sports is for reaching new goals.
Yeah.
For English. New goals for humanity. Yes. So yes, and for drama, yes, and why we don't put all together and make yes, and say because then you have the one thing, you have focusing of new goals and you have more drama because of the domestic violence things, you know.
Okay, so I've got one here. Is there anyone else? Two more hands. Then I'm going to bring in Sascha first to make his final comments because he's got to leave.
Okay. I have
No?
Sascha.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, mine's for Sascha and also for Steffi, because you mentioned free associations, and we see nowadays a lot of self-organized events, especially in this like ninja warrior CrossFit thing, where people do their own Olympic kind of thing, and in those events, women consent. Sometimes they participate in mixed groups or mixed teams. My question is if you think that might be the solution, a development, possible development of sports, that people self-organize and this kind of events grow and the women can consent to participate with or without men in their teams. So if you see this as a possible future for sports.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I would like to come back to the nationalist topic. So it's really, I was thinking about it before, in the football events and also the Olympic Games, if this this show event or those sports events, if they are really used for nationalist ideas or to express nationalist ideas, and if they are mistreated in this sense too much, and if it's also maybe possible that the nations themselves, like the states, misuse it as a showcase to show their power, or like
China.
Yeah,
2008 Olympic Games.
Yeah, and if it should be abolished, that we have these representation of nations at all. In any sports.
Interesting. Right, all the hands are going up now. Sabina, and then over to you.
Well, I just wanted to ask Stefan, because I think one of the fact that we have men in women's sports is one of the oddest developments that we've seen in these last years. And I wonder why we can't say that a man who identifies as a woman is simply a man who identifies as a woman and nothing else. I mean, why would we, and my question to you is, a man who identifies as a woman is a man who identifies as a woman. So my question is to you, Stephanie, do you see any future in women's sports? Because it's clear that any male who's gone through male puberty will always be able to have that slight advantage towards women.
Okay, and I think this is going to have to be the final one. Yes.
Just a short comment to the previous gentleman here. I think there's a danger about throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Because, clearly there are fascist tendencies in China and so forth, where they are using competition and, strength and vigor and so forth for dubious ends. But I think one needs to separate, on the one hand, the very wonderful and nice competition where you want to be number one, where you want to compete, and that's not only, if you're in sports, it's like play the piano, competitions and so forth, to excel, to be better than anybody else. And I think it is very dangerous if you would have the, so to speak, the dubious fascist, idea about sports somehow affect or contaminate the very joyful, wonderful idea of competing in sports. I think these are two very distinct fields, and we need to keep them apart, because Germany has to, compete in technology and everything, and there's nothing dubious about that. There's nothing nationalist or strange about it. To keep these two fields apart.
In many ways, the irony seems to me today that nation-based sport is less nationalistic than it has been previously. That element's almost downplayed. It's actually almost much more the culture war stuff that is elevated and the politicized element of sport these days. and the nation basis is actually lots of the time quite absent.
I think maybe why not reintroduce a little bit more battle between nations? Like when I was a kid, we were fighting, we were playing ice hockey against the Finns, and it was joyful. It wasn't something dubious about it. Just Sweden against Finland. Fantastic.
Right, I can see you itching. So, pick up on whatever you want.
On the libertarian, nationalistic, and so on argument. I did not argue for ethnic nationalism or something like that. I did argue against a role too great for the government in sports. And that's the thing about the nation state. How this nation is organized is an interesting question, but not a question of sports. And I agree completely with you that self-organization is a thing in sports. And at the beginning of amateur sport and professional sports was self-organization. Soccer was not developed by the British government, as I know, but by people and basketball or other things. And that's an important thing. And all those organizations should be free to decide who participates and who not. And who is a legitimate woman or not. That's not a government task. That's a task of those associations from my perspective. And finally, all those associations, because I have to be a little bit more libertarian even, the illusion that government saves and protects the weakest in comparison to free association does not go with the reality of government. Because government prefers people who are closer to government than people who are far from government. And that's the thing. That does not apply exactly to sports. But to say that we need government, the state, in sports or in free association, by otherwise the weakest would be suppressed or something, or oppressed, that's a little bit simplistic. Thank you. I know that you do not agree, but I have to leave now because
He's scared that you won't agree.
I hope nobody agrees.
All right, thank you, Sascha. So this has got to be, panel, your sort of final comments, I think. I mean, we can go and discuss more of this over a drink. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to shut you all up, but I've run over. Is the truth of the matter. So, Stephanie. There's a few things addressed to you, but just give us that and some sort of final thoughts to take away with us.
Yes, probably two things. To answer Sabine's question, at the moment the future for women's sports is rather grim because there are no checks and balances in place to really grant them their rights. Because men can just enter the women's category, and as the IOC president Thomas Bach said, there is actually no way to find out who the women are. There's also no political will, and that's the huge problem, because of course you can find out who the women are and who has the male advantage, but the political will is not there, and that's the main problem for women. And this is a problem because when you see these events in sports, like these, it's the boxing at the Olympics, it's extremely discouraging for women and for girls, not only because they see that actually women are violated and their rights don't matter, what you said, women did not consent to this. On the contrary, they didn't want to compete. They were actually made to compete by sponsors, by trainers, by associations, by their country. They did not consent, and probably there is a way to also go into mixed sport events, also combat sports, but you still have these huge safety concerns. And I think, the Paris Olympics, the boxing was a really, really terrible event, because some people really cried when they saw Angela Carini getting really beaten up by a man, and it's easy to find out what this is, and experts really warned about that it's going to happen, and it happened in plain sight, and it was willfully, and that's quite, discouraging. But probably people will get more and more upset about this, and also tell trainers, newspapers, their politicians that this is not right, and they need to grant women the same rights the men have. And we also have to look out for our children, because we cannot teach them that this is the right thing to do, and our society cannot thrive without these rights.
Okay, thank you. Robert?
Yeah, I actually wrote down 4 topics, which I'm going to actually answer really quickly. So I remember your first question was like half an hour ago, like I didn't forget about you. So you asked about injuries in sports and display, like if I'm humiliating someone. I think that was like the sense of the question.
Gladiator, I want to see the blood thing.
To be honest, I don't want to see it. Like me personally, I think there are always people in the crowd who wants to see it, but I think mainly it's not about injuring someone, it's not about humiliating someone, it's like in football you're trying to score a goal, in boxing or in combat sports you try to either choke someone out or to submit him or to knock him out. It's part of the sport, you cannot change it. And there's a really strict rule book. You got state commissions everywhere, so it like in 1993 when the UFC was founded, it was mayhem. Like you had no weight limits, like a lightweight could fight against someone who's 200 kilograms. Now it's all standardized, so it's much better. Then to your law, and I have to support you, because like with our gyms, we have one big problem now. How do you call it? Self-identification? Or
yeah.
Self-determination law. So we had to talk with our lawyer just last week about this topic, who informed us, say, by the way, if you have a member at your gym, let him be male, and he comes down to you and says, I identify as female, we have to let him into the female changing room. And we have to change his data in the CRM system that Robert now is still Robert, but female Robert. No, it's still Robert, but it's female Robert, and I can't do anything against it. And I'm like, holy shit. Pardon my French. But it's like, okay, but it shouldn't be allowed. Like, no, like, I tried to explain it, like, to my colleagues, and they were like, okay, what are we gonna do? I'm like, I got no clue. No clue what we're gonna do. Probably say no.
Yes, you have to say
We're gonna 99% we're gonna say no, and then let the state see what's gonna happen. Then your question regarding women's sports, basketball, WNBA, Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Let's look at the numbers. Last year, where's she playing? Indiana Fever. Like they were playing like at a high school venue or something. Now she's selling out 20,000 seat arenas. Did well in the playoffs. I bought her jersey because I think it's just a great story. To be honest, she's freaking amazing. So I think she's one of the reasons why women's sports in the US can actually grow now, and that they're gonna pay more. It's all about TV money. Like in the NFL, they have a TV deal that's worth $10 billion a season. I'm not saying the women's going to have the same numbers, but eventually you need to have those superstars who are going to grow the sport. Caitlin Clark, magnificent. Your question, Joe Rogan experience, and I had to laugh. Of course, I watched the episode that you were referring to. I have to admit, I love Joe Rogan. First of all, as a commentator, like in our sports. Not always listening to his podcast, but they're like the last couple episodes also regarding the election were quite important. So I listened carefully, and some things that were mentioned also with the UFC, like some things I agreed with, some not. But I don't think that people who are constantly working out, people who are like into this have to be conservative. Like, I know many people who are into the UFC and they're definitely democratic. So I know Dana White and Joe Rogan, you got some bold guys looking like meatheads, but it's not really a typical sign to be a conservative and to be a UFC fan.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Stefan, last word to you.
Okay, thank you. I think I don't want to end this discussion with, let's say, such a dark view on the future, because I have the impression that the future for women's sports is not that bad, as far as I can see it. The sporting bodies have already started on thinking about how to change the rules. As far as I have seen that, beyond the IOC, right? That is then done by the World Athletics Federation, or whether they all are responsible. I mean, at the end, they have their working group that are responsible for changing the rules. They change the rules quite regularly. There are a lot of reasons why you would change the rules, or why you would have to change the rules. One is you want to increase the entertainment value. Another might be you have to change because sport tactics has changed, or there are fairness issues, and you have to change and adapt the rules. And as far as I can see that, also with regard to the issue that we were talking about, these working groups consist of experts and are developing the rules. So, and rules are nothing static. So rules will change. We will, I think, they will be adapted, adjusted, and then we will see what works and what doesn't work, and that is then the responsibilities of the federations to do that. And as far as I can see, I think from the audience asked that or said that, I think in athletics, for example, or was that in swimming? I think in swimming, you can trans women are allowed to participate only if the transition took place before puberty. That is the rule in swimming. Just to give an example, that I know that, I don't know if that is the right decision, but at the end I would say it's up to the sporting bodies to try and test, and then to see if that has to be changed, or if they have to adapt them. So the future is, let's say it's not that bad. There are maybe already solutions. So that's one thing. The other thing is also, Olympic Games. I don't know, if I would have sold 10 million tickets, I would have, $1 billion of revenues with sponsoring income. I wouldn't say that Olympic Games are not successful. I would even say the opposite. They have never been as successful as they are now. They were actually dead in the 80s, not only because of the boycotts that happened there, but also from a commercial point of view. And then in the 80s, the IOC decided for the first time to open it for professional athletes and also to commercialize it. Actually, they did that in 1984 in Los Angeles, in 1988.
Coca-Cola,
yes. And so then actually, and that probably is now the point for Sascha, that through the commercialization of the Olympic Games, actually they survived and improved and became better, and are now actually a success story. Although all the things that you also mentioned that has to be discussed and should be seen critically, but still I think what we can say nowadays that Olympic Games actually thrive.
Can you thank them all?